Welcome back to Splice Splatter, the film podcast presented by the Cocteau Cinema in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where classic horror.
It's modern gore.
This is the longest we've been away from recording.
I know.
For ever since we started the podcast.
We did this last year was the last time we recorded.
This is our first recording of 2025.
Yeah.
There's been no break for you guys, but for us, we're out of practice.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we were trying to, everything feels new. Everything feels fresh. Hope you
Warren's
all are
hearing a buzz.
Yeah, Warren's hearing a buzz that he doesn't know has been there the whole time. Yep. Hope you all are having a happy New Year so far.
Happy 2025. It's a weird one already.
I was going to say it's not great. Why did I say that? It's kind of
going
shitty.
great.
Hopefully this brings some levity when we talk about death. Right? That makes everyone feel better.
Absolutely.
Death
makes me feel better.
How are you doing?
Oh, God, how am I?
In the scheme of things.
Well, I brought in a Siena tidbit for you that my partner made me write down.
Yeah.
For Al specifically.
Stop.
Stop. Because yeah.
I love them already.
She made me watch The Mummy, which, as you know, I had not seen yet.
Because she saw the VHSs in our office.
Yes. And so we were sitting down to watch The Mummy. I was chatting away, as I'm usually doing during a movie. And she bonks me on the shoulder and goes, "Every scene of The Mummy is important."
True. Facts.
Yeah. She I was trying to interject, and she's like, no. Every scene of The Mummy is important.
Yeah. She's shut it, Siena.
Yep. Yeah. So I thought you'd enjoy that.
Honestly, though, that movie was it still is one of my comfort movies. It's so good. I wish it was more horror so we could talk about it on here.
Know.
But I think we just drool over how hot the cast is the whole time.
Obsessed with the outfits. Obsessed with Rachel Weisz's outfits.
Oh, yeah. You came in and I was like, "Are you going to start dressing like her now?" And you were like, "Yeah,
I already do."
Yeah, you do have fits where you dress like her. Any other movies? I have actually some horror movies I've watched. We've both seen Nosferatu now, finally.
We have both seen Nosferatu, and I'm scared to talk about it because I didn't like it very much.
Well, I wouldn't say you didn't like it. I would say that you all know that we just covered Interview and Dracula, and you kind of said it to me, which was the further you've gotten away from it, right? The more you it was, I don't think, spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen it still, so skip a little bit.
Skip 30 seconds.
Yeah. I was going to say it's just very much Warren's covering his ears. It's just the plot is very similar.
Yes.
That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Okay, spoiler over.
Yeah.
And so I think
I think
your reason. Because you love Dracula so much.
I love Dracula, and that was very much I felt like I did it a disservice by going into Nosferatu immediately after revisiting Dracula, because I love that Coppola version so much and how excessive it is. And listening back to the episode, I had said before watching it that I suspected it wasn't going to be gay enough for me. And I was right. It wasn't gay enough for me.
But you know what it was for me is it was depressing and sad.
That's fair.
And it was exactly what I wish I would have seen.
That
we talked about,
sense.
it did the things I wanted and it didn't do.
Yeah.
So it made sense. I fucking loved it. And my whole personality is just vampires now.
Which I love. I love that it's drawing you into the vampire.
I'm 2 seconds away from setting a dentist appointment to get paid.
Good. Everybody convince Al.
2 seconds, man.
Yes. Bully Al on the internet. Make the fangs happen.
Make it happen, guys.
Yes.
Peer pressure really works on me.
Should make that a behind the screams. Al getting their fangs.
I don't want people inside my mouth. I'm good. I'm so good.
Let's move on.
Also, I just want to say, I'm bully Siena to see The Substance because I finally watched that too. Fucking just what a ride. And then also I just started watching Willard.
Is that which one is that? Remind me.
Crispin Glover. It's 2003.
Ooh.
But boy, oh boy, the cinematography in that is so fun. So I really want to do a Willard arachnophobia. So bully Siena on that. I really want to do those too.
Well, I know you've been talking about arachnophobia for so long.
And I'm you can pick.
We must.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm going down my weird horror
love that
journey. So, but today.
Today, oh my God. Good. This is a good start to the episode. We're doing some found footage horror. So I brought in the...
Siena's got props.
Yeah, I brought in some props. So if you're not watching the video, we have a little 95 Sony Handycam here, which I actually did use for shooting part of my movie. Just a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
A little teeny bit. But that was the only part that I got to cam up myself, which was really fun. So, yeah.
You're like, so I get it.
Yeah.
I feel like everyone had this, like, this general.
This kind of, yeah.
We had, like, a huge camera.
Did you have one of the, like, the fancy?
It was big. Nice. And it was, like...
I love a beefy camera.
It was so beefy. And I think it was, like, full-size tapes. And then... we finally got something a little bit smaller that had like those I forget what they're called, the little discs or the little tapes. I forgot what those were called, but that was like the new hot thing. And,
yeah.
Oh man.
Oh my God. Why am I was just talking about these yesterday. I'm gonna remember as soon as we stop recording. But,
yeah, that's
great.
Great. Yeah. So I found footage stuff is fun. Are you a fan of the genre?
I am, and I had not revisited. Well, we should say what we're covering.
Oh yeah. You can tell by the title. You guys know.
You guys know.
It's like fine. They're like, we're good. We're going to say it anyway.
To tell you what you already know, we're doing Blair Witch Project from 1999.
And Creep from, I already forgot the year.
2014.
Thank you.
I always keep your years in my notes
Bless
just in case.
2015? Yeah. 2015.
So I had not revisited Blair Witch Project since first watching it in high school. Which was
oh no.
My freshman year of high school at Capitol High in Santa Fe. I enrolled in a videography class because I was like, I want to be a filmmaker.
Yeah, as we did.
as we did. But because the school was underfunded, the editing software that we were supposed to get for all of the computers didn't come in until the end of the semester. And so if my memory serves me correctly, we spent, I shit you not, the first probably like September up until mid-November just watching and rewatching and studying Blair Witch Project.
Oh wow, they really had no curriculum down for
correct. Correct.
It's like, I get an idea, analyze the same film.
And like this teacher loved Blair Witch Project, but like I can understand where he was coming from. The idea was to encourage us that like anybody can be a filmmaker.
Truly.
Right?
Which is like a fun feeling to have.
Which is a great feeling to have.
Oh my God.
But because of that, I have like a very weird relationship with this movie and had not revisited it since then. So much needed revisit.
Yeah.
What's your Blair Witch history?
I remember I have an older sister. And she's never been a fan of horror. And I remember she went to go see it like with friends, and we kind of grew up next to, Michigan, we like grew up with like woods next to us. We had a tiny little park though, but still it was like woodsy and like it's still spooky at night. And she saw it and then like was super freaked out. I want to say at some point like her friends like put things in the trees, or like she put things in I don't know, or like I put things in the trees. I have no memory of my childhood. You put things in the
trees and blacked it out.
Yeah.
That so feels on brand for you, actually. I would buy that.
Oh yeah. It was, like, remember the lesbian witches I thought I lived next to?
I'm so glad we came full circle back to the lesbian witches. Call back.
Yeah, y'all could find that episode.
It's the ritual episode. Yeah.
God damn it. So never saw it, but like I remember her being really freaked out about it. And I feel like that, like when I was younger, I was in, like my mom showed me like sci-fi horror, kind of like a la The Body Snatchers, stuff like that. But wasn't like a horror, like intrigued by horror in that way. So didn't see it as a kid. I think I only saw it, I've seen it within the last 10 years for the first time. So I'm like, I saw it way after the fact.
Interesting.
You know, kind of after, you know, the movement, I feel like that came in like 2000. I feel like Paranormal Activity kind of kicked off this whole
there was like a renaissance.
Yeah, thank you. I was like, what's that word? Where things go back. But so I feel like I saw it late in the game, obviously, and because I'd seen so many other found footage films that I really liked, like at the time I was really into Paranormal Activity. Yeah, it kind of like fell flat, but like I was so glad I saw it, and then seeing it and knowing that it kicked off a genre, and like I can't imagine seeing it when it came out.
I can't imagine. Well, especially
you know what I mean?
Because of
like,
all of the like meta marketing they did that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
But...
So how real it must have felt. And I think like I just feel like it lived in this beautiful little pocket, and I feel like I missed that pocket. So that's kind of like my
I kind of relate to that, because I feel so terrible saying this, because I know that like if you love the Blair Witch Project, you love the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah.
And it's a movie that, because there's so much lore, there's like, you know, the production designer has released like his Bible, there's all of these like additional spin-offs and kind of other materials exploring, like, because you see so little of the story of the Blair Witch in the film, it kind of leaves you wanting more. And so I very much, it completely makes sense to me why it's so gripping. And weirdly, when I watched it in high school and was just like rewatching it over and over again, I loved it and thought it was so terrifying. And this was like one of my like landmark movies that I remembered really scaring me and making me love horror at an early age. And like it worked, and like seeing it in like a darkened room with other people for the first time, I think helped a lot with that, because hearing other people's reactions to the movie makes a big difference.
It at night.
That does
I also
help.
watched it during the day, I'm pretty sure.
Were you folding laundry?
Rude. I do that a lot while I watch movies. I don't fold laundry. That's such a lie. I leave that shit in the dryer.
That tracks for you, actually.
Except for funny games.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
But so I loved it back then, and I had a very different watch experience this time.
Oh. Do you want to say now or save it?
I mean, I feel like I'm kind of giving it away just in the way I'm talking about it.
Did not
love it. Did not love it.
Yeah, and I say that already. I didn't love it either.
I didn't love it, and I feel so bad because I know we owe so much to this.
We
movie.
do.
Blair Witch walked so that so much else could run.
Oh yeah. I mean, Creep wouldn't.
Creep wouldn't exist. I liked Creep better. I liked Creep better.
Yeah, that literally never happened.
I know.
It might be like a first time ever that you like.
I think it actually is.
Yeah.
And I wasn't expecting that at all, because this was such a landmark.
You were so excited going in.
I was so excited going in, and I feel so terrible saying that. And I genuinely don't know how fair this is, but I think as we talk about the movie, this is one of the main things that I want to get your take on, because so much of the lore and the mythology behind the Blair Witch is this like life imitates art, where like so much of what the characters were experiencing, the actors were really experiencing.
I know nothing about the behind the scenes of Blair Witch. I like literally know nothing, so I'm so excited to hear everything.
It's a really fun behind the scenes too, which is part of it. It was really interesting to research. I have moral qualms about it.
Yeah.
It's a very like Werner Herzog filmmaking style.
I'll
say that. But like, really, the thing that I could not get past in my own reaction, and I think I need to like set the tone of it here, is just I felt so different watching this movie now as like an adult femme presenting filmmaker than I did as a 12-year-old, because I went in with this memory of Heather's character as just like an annoying bitch. Like I just remembered absolutely finding her so grating and just like impossible to stand, and like the more I watched it, the more I hated her. And going back and watching it this time, I couldn't find the Blair Witch scary, because I was too constantly scared for Heather and for what's going to happen with this woman alone in the woods with these two angry dudes who feel to me like they're the real threat. And like, I couldn't get past my own
fear for her,
and my own empathy for all of the shit she's going through as a filmmaker. Where like she's trying to, you know, lead people back home, and the landscape is literally shifting around her. And she steps up and takes the blame for it. Like, even though she doesn't know what the fuck is going on, she's still like, I'm responsible for these people. I'll still like let them scream at me. And I just felt like I was watching Heather get abused. And
I mean,
Like,
she definitely does.
I mean, she does. And apparently they cut out a lot of additional arguments between Heather and Josh, where like we see a lot of Heather and Mike arguing. Mike's the one who lives until the end.
Okay, got
We see more of them in conflict, and Josh is kind of like the mediator, right? Actually, in reality, Heather and Josh were fighting like all the time, and a lot of the footage the filmmakers cut out was because they realized if they showed too much of it, it felt like the guys were ganging up on her. And like that's what happened in real life.
I believe it.
I feel that dynamic under the scenes still. And so I was just watching it feeling stressed the fuck out for Heather in not a fun horror movie way.
Did you research?
I researched before, which was part
so it made
of it
you...
too.
Oh, interesting.
Because also this movie was a big part of why Heather left the film industry, because she's furious about how she was treated.
Oh shit! See, I don't know any.
There's so much. I want.
Where do you start?
I so want this to be like a hopeful story about the power of scrappy independent filmmaking, and instead it just feels like this giant femme filmmakers are a joke punchline that just like...
Well, mine will be levity. I go second.
Great. So glad.
Mine's like fun and hopeful and feels good. So we'll have a different... you can set us off on a depressing note.
As I usually do. Let's be honest. That's pretty on brand for me. But like, so saying all of that... Sorry, as I hit the microphone. Saying all of that, I have a lot of respect for a lot of things about this film, and I think it's a really entertaining film to talk about the making of. Like, there's a lot of rich material to research and like interviews from everybody and like so much behind the scenes material. So like there's a lot of fun stuff to talk about. I just need to get out there. Like if I sound like I'm holding anything back, it's because I know there's a lot of good reasons people love this film, and I know also like maybe I'm not in the best place to watch this because I'm a femme-presenting filmmaker who just came off of a film that, like, got shut down for a couple of days because of weather. And so, like, I'm mad. And, like, maybe because of that, I'm not able to look past it. But, like, it really, like...
I'm with you. Because there's something there, again, like, watching it again, so... Hopefully, I mean, we can appreciate the behind the scenes of it all, or like, shame.
Yeah, it's
behind the scenes of it all.
It's gonna be like an even 50-50 because like there's parts of it that are really funny and fun, and parts of it that are just like absolutely horrifying. So let's dive in.
Yay!
I forgot to ask if you have tidbits. I have tidbits, but I want to hear if you do. Now that I've brought the mood down.
Mine goes kind of like with
yours. Okay, do you want to use it to lead in?
Yeah, I think
Let's do that. Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have two tids for you to start with.
It's always when I don't come with one, you have two.
I often come with two, and then if you say that you have one, I'll only tell one. So an Al mini tid. One of the films, you know, I love when I can find what movies a team watched for inspiration behind the scenes. One of the ones that I was most surprised by for this movie that I knew you would love was Christopher Guest's Waiting for Guffman.
No way.
Yeah. They were all watching that behind the scenes. And so apparently one of the most, according to the production designer, one of the most quoted lines on the Blair Witch Project set was, "I hate you and I hate your ass face."
Oh my God. I almost put on Waiting for Guffman literally the other day. I was thinking about it.
That's well, I mean, that's documentary found footage. Like, yeah.
That is a wild source
Isn't
for
that
them, though.
So funny
because it's like nothing like it.
It's so tonally different. But
Christopher Guest is one of the best mockumentaries.
He's incredible. Yeah, well, and like it kind of makes perfect. It makes sense. I mean, this was not the first found footage film. Cannibal Holocaust is kind of one that people cite a lot. There's a couple others that came in between Cannibal Holocaust and this, and there's other movies we've watched. Like even Texas Chainsaw starts out with like a found footagey element. For sure. So true. It's not like this is the beginning of it completely, but it's the film that really popularized this style. So and so they weren't like watching Paranormal Activity; they were watching Waiting for Guffman.
Oh my gosh. Wild.
Like there's so much more mockumentary stuff. This was much more associated with comedy. So that's my first tid.
That's amazing.
Second tid. I feel like Travis might have mentioned this, so he might know this. I can't remember if you've heard this, but Stephen King and Eli Roth had a conversation about this movie for Eli Roth's History of Horror. I think that's what it's called. I'm pretty sure that's the name of the show. They had a conversation.
Yep.
Sorry, guys, if I got the name wrong.
They gabbed.
And King said, quote, "The first time that I saw the Blair Witch Project, I was in the hospital and I was doped up. I think he'd been in a car accident, if I remember correctly. My son brought in a VHS tape of it and he said, 'You got to watch this.' Halfway through, I turned it off and said, turn it off, it's too freaky." So this is one of the only movies that Stephen King said he couldn't get through on the first watch because it scared him so much.
And the dope.
There is that.
Just kidding.
Let's
so
give
funny.
it a little context. But
Wild.
yeah.
Huh.
So wasn't sure if you knew that one coming
No,
in,
not
but...
at all. I really know nothing about this. This will all be like, this is all news to me.
So, oh my God, I'm so curious how this will change your feelings or not change your feelings.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm glad I stated my feelings at the beginning.
Absolutely. So we can do like a little check-in at the end. So I labeled this one The Blair Witch Project, or The Power of PD, which is production design. Nice. This is one of my favorite sources for this episode was an 8-part series on Dread Central that the production designer wrote about his experience, kind of looking back in, I think from 2016, I want to say. I've linked to all of the different parts in my notes so you can go back through. But I really think so much of the moments in this movie that are the most successful to me and the parts that have lasted the longest are essentially all due to A, Heather's performance, and B, the production design. And so I really, because I feel like production design is not something that we've had as much opportunity to talk about.
It's hard to find. I've noticed this because, like, that's what I went to school for.
Right.
And it's, like, my favorite thing. And it's so hard to find
I feel like
anyone talking about
production
production
design. A lot of production designers don't seem to give interviews. And I don't know if it's because people aren't interviewing them or because they're not talking about it. But either way.
I feel like people do not interview.
Yeah.
They just think that shit happens.
Yep.
Like, that's the director. What?
Not how that works.
Yeah.
So let's, like, take a moment to acknowledge the importance of production design. So this is directed by 2 directors, writer, director, editors, Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez. Neither is all that well known for their other film work since then, but Sanchez is now directing TV. So he's done Yellow Jackets, he did some American Horror Stories, so he's doing some kind of fun,
still in the horror vein.
Some fun horror-ish stuff. Heather Donahue has officially changed her name to Rehance, which... Love that.
Yeah.
Also, she's now a medical marijuana grower. She's writing books about that and about her experience of going from the film industry into the medical marijuana industry.
Yeah.
She was also in Taken, and she was in the miniseries Boys and Girls, but she really did not have a good experience with Hollywood.
Oh, no.
So I'm glad that she's found something that's treating
chill.
her a little bit better. I will say that throughout my notes, I talk about her as Heather because all the others, I'm using their character names, and their character names are the names of the actors at that time. So I just wanted to get that up there at the front. Heather has changed her name to Rehance.
Yeah. But we'll be referring to her.
We'll be referring to her by the character. Heather. Michael C. Williams, he's also in Altered and The Objective, and Joshua Leonard, who is also in Unsane, If I Stay, Bates Motel, and an episode of True Detective. So also kind of interesting to note that the guys maybe had a little bit more success moving on from this.
Well, yeah.
And we'll talk about why. So let's see. There's my little shout out about Heather's name. All 3 of the actors have talked about the fact that using their real names at the time for these roles was something they didn't really think about much at the time, that they really regretted looking back.
It's because it's got to be easy just to, like, call. You know what I mean? Especially when you're, like, filming stuff, I assume, too. It's just, like, easier not to forget, because then if you get a take and don't realize that. Well,
and it's also, you know, especially when you're filming constantly. Like, they're filming basically their whole day.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense why they would do that. And it makes sense why, if you're a young actor and, you know, none of them were in SAG at the time. So I think Heather had the most acting experience, but I think a lot of them were kind of coming from a stage background.
Got it.
And so I think they didn't see this as a movie that was gonna go on to the huge success that it does.
Like, let's just have fun and film this and keep it simple.
They think it's gonna go straight to VHS, if that.
What a time.
And so they're not worried about using their real names. They use their real names. It blows up, and all of a sudden, there's a whole lot of problems with that we'll get into, but mainly it becomes harder for them in the years after that to get cast as anything else, because everybody thinks that they're not actors, that this is just them being themselves. So I at first kind of felt sympathy for that, but also was like, I can understand both sides. I felt a lot more suspicious of the directors when I read that the original script did give them character names.
Oh.
So the script had the characters listed as Jane, Bill, and John.
Okay.
Which, if I understand that those were in there as like placeholders, but if I were in the actor's shoes, I feel like I would be much more likely to underestimate that part of the contract saying we can use your real names if in the script it's not my real name. Like, I'm going to feel like they're probably going to edit this, and we'll talk about this too. This movie was supposed to be edited as one small chunk of a larger thing. So they are kind of under a false impression of what it's going to be.
Got it.
And part of that is because it changes in the editing room. But put a pin in that. Pin put. It's produced by Haxan Films, which of course named after the 1922 Silent Witch movie, which I feel like that feels like one that would be really good to do with live music at the theater sometime. And moving into the background of the film, is the idea came when Myrick and Sanchez, who were film students together at the University of Central Florida, which I also just find funny that they were in Florida while creating this story. Did
you not just see my face? Like,
isn't that weird?
Isn't like hilly, and Florida's not hilly, is it? I don't remember it being that way.
Central Florida is like swampy, to my understanding.
Yeah, it feels very like, I don't know, just even like Midwestern. It feels like it'd be like Michigan, Indiana, anywhere. Like for me, it looks like Michigan. I'm like, that looks like Michigan.
100%, and it feels so tied to the East Coast, and like there's like echoes of like the Salem witch trials and stuff like that. Like, it's very much tapping into that kind of mythology, and so interesting that this story is born in Florida. But weird. They both kind of started talking about the fact that they found paranormal docs scarier than traditional horror movies, and so they were like, what if we kind of make something that combines the best of both worlds, that is a horror movie shot in the style of a supernatural doc. And then it goes through a very unusual development phase. We're probably never going to cover a movie that gets made quite like this again. So they cut a pitch tape together with interviews from the directors. They pass that on to it gets passed on to John Pearson, who's this kind of kingmaker at Sundance. He's the guy who discovered a bunch of stuff like Hoop Dreams. I think he had a big role in Spike Lee's career taking off. Pearson passes it on to IFC. And so the pitch video starts getting shown on basic cable on the channel Split Screen in August of 97 before any of the movies been made. Weird, right?
Took that and just was like, yep, I'm going to just play this tape.
It's a wild time.
Wow. Whoa.
So
be horrified.
Yeah, and Split Screen pays for the segment because it's being broadcast on basic cable. So actually, the money that they get paid for the distribution of their pitch video, it becomes a big chunk of the budget of the film. Oh my God. Which, like, wild.
That's so weird.
It's very weird. And it only gets weirder from here out. This is such a unique movie in so many ways. And I hinted at this a second ago. The part that we now know as the Blair Witch Project was originally supposed to be just one part of a 2-part whole, which was going to be like kind of a frame story around the footage with like false talking head interviews with police officers and stuff like that, going into the aftermath of the disappearance, interviewing Heather's parents, stuff like that.
Cool.
Part 2 is never shot.
Yeah.
So, which is also again part of why the actors think that they're just going to be like maybe 20 minutes of the whole movie.
Wow.
That's not what happens.
Yeah, damn, they didn't know anything.
Yeah. And so moving into the writing of this, which again, completely different from how any other movie will ever cover is written. There was a 35-page screenplay. I tried to find it online. I could only find transcripts. I really would love to get my hands on an original copy of that. But because the majority was meant to be improvised, it was essentially just sort of an outline.
Okay.
Which is kind of the way David Lynch writes a lot of his scripts. Or wrote a lot of his scripts at the beginning of his career. And so here's a quote from Heather about kind of how this process unspools over the course of filming. Because basically, they're given kind of an outline to start out with, and then the filmmakers have kind of created this physical maze for them, for lack of a better term. They're using early GPS systems to navigate them through it.
What, MapQuest? Like, what was... I don't think we had anything other than
right?
that.
In October of 97, they had, like, boxes. It's really funny reading the articles from like the time of the film's release at Sundance, where they have to explain what a global positioning system is in the article.
Oh my God, yeah. I was gonna say, I feel like those of you listening, like most of them are like my age. I feel like most of you are my age, but like that would have blown my mind at the time.
Well, it blew all the actors' minds.
Damn.
But so they were kind of being led by GPS. They had like code words to talk to the filmmakers if they needed to like break scenario.
Got it.
But the goal was for them to be as much in it as possible.
Sure. Oh, that's scary.
Well, we're getting to it, Al. But part of how they kind of crafted the narrative as it went on was by almost like Hunger Games style, like dropping notes for them, basically, where
a little scavenger hunt.
Yeah, it was like a little character scavenger hunt. And so here's a quote from Heather about how the scavenger hunt worked.
I keep saying "oh gosh" today. Sorry. If anyone wants to
oh gosh.
Oh gosh. If anyone wants to do a counter of that, sorry.
There's a new Splice drinking game for you. So here's your quote. You know when you drop off 35mm still film in the plastic canisters? There were 3 of those in milk crates. We would find the milk crate through a global positioning system, sort of like they use in the North Star car systems, the satellite navigation systems.
Oh my gosh.
The Haxen guys who made the film would program waypoints into that little GPS unit. We'd find those milk crates at the waypoints, and in those milk crates would be these 3 little cans, each with our names on it. We would open them up, read our notes, and try not to show them to each other.
Oh, like they're beats for their characters. Oh, that's cool.
So, as the day progressed, we would improvise about the story structure that the Haxen guys had provided for us. From there, we would come up with the scenes. We could go beyond what they'd given us. We could create scenes and basically take these characters to places we didn't even think they would go. We would just go wherever we wanted. That was part of the appeal, was to me initially, was that I saw an improvised feature. I mean, as an actor, you just never get that kind of freedom.
Yeah.
So, it's a pretty cool idea.
I love that. I'm gonna be so for real.
Like that.
That's gonna be so much.
That sounds so fun.
Creep is like there are. I feel like I'm already seeing parallels in the way these were shot.
I'm sure.
As an actor, yeah, that's gotta be especially like a young actor where you can kind of just show
really
up
immerse yourself in
I feel
it.
like I'd have fun with that, and I don't like improv.
Yeah, well, and
like you're in woods with people, and like it really is like play and pretend.
It
way that
is.
doesn't feel like, you know,
well, and
you're shooting it and stuff, so you're not pressured.
And it becomes kind of increasingly real each day of the shoot, and we'll get into that.
Oh my God.
But before we get into that, themes, approach, and history. So here's, since we're talking about improv, the kind of behind the scenes on the casting.
Okay.
Fascinating. So the directors put a casting call in backstage saying that they're looking for actors with a strong improv background. And they have this fascinating audition process. Here's a quote from Heather. Quote, I read in an ad in Backstage in New York where I was living at the time. You know what it said? Quote, an improvised feature film shot in wooded location. It's going to be hell, and most of you reading this probably shouldn't come.
I mean, at least they teed them up for what they're going to get.
They were honest, yeah. They used every possible deterrent. We actually got to the audition. When we actually got to the audition, there was another sign put out that said, "We want natural people. If you've done improv before," which I'd done a lot of wacky improv stuff, they said, "If that's the kind of improv stuff you've done in the past, we probably don't want you. We want people who can behave completely naturally and can basically act in extreme circumstances. If you don't like that, go away." And then when we'd gone into the room, Dan Myers, one of the directors, or Dan Myrick, sorry, this is, I think is misquoted, was the one who auditioned me. He said, "You've served 7 years behind your sentence. Why should we let you out on parole?"
Oh.
So he immediately gives her an acting prompt.
Yeah.
And that was it. No monologue, no scene, no cold reading. Just go up without creating the character or creating a story without thinking about it for a second. So
God, that's not fun anymore. That's terrifying. You said that, I was like, wait, what are you talking about?
It's so scary.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I know some people's brains just can turn like that, like turn on and just
and
like,
it makes
riff.
complete sense to me that Heather would be somebody who's able to pick that up and just run with it from seeing this performance.
Yeah.
And it also makes it all the more tragic that people didn't realize this was a performance, because that's some incredible improv talent.
I was going to say, like, watching it, that's the one thing I really appreciated again is how real it felt.
It's very, very real. And again, we're getting to why. Josh was partially cast because he was the only one of the three who started out knowing how to operate a camera, which is a helpful skill for this movie. Heather also says that she modeled her character on a female director she'd worked with, which very telling. Also, and I'll get into that more later, but just put a pin in that. Moving into kind of the production, the core production team was 5 people. So you had the 2 directors, the production designer Ben Rock, who's the one who I have a ton of interviews with coming up, and DP Neil Fredericks, who, of course, part of what makes this film a little bit different as a DP is the DP is not on set for most of this, is not the one cam opping, is not the one supervising the cam op. Like, he is helping create the plan, he's sourcing the camera, he's helping figure out kind of what stops they're going to use, stuff like that. And then he has to just trust the actors to do their thing. And these are people who, 2 of the 3 have never used a camera before. And he has to give them like a crash course in how to use both a 16mm film camera and a camcorder, so that all 3 of them can use both. And it's hard. That's a hard skill to pick up in 2 days.
And so now you're trying to like record things, right? And then also have a performance behind the camera at the same time, like doing 2 jobs.
Yeah. And of course they're recording their own audio, and that's a lot of when you see
the audio part too. God, I've had to do audio a couple times in my life, and this is not ideal audio conditions in a lot of ways. It's all of the actors are being put up for an incredible challenge. And that's part of what's appealing and part of what's unique about this film, and a lot of what I think makes this film work in the places where it works best for me, that imitators have not succeeded at, is that it really is shot by amateurs. Like, there are so many films that go on after Blair Witch to try and emulate its style of, like, quote unquote shaky cam, which, like, this is what popularized that. Right.
But when it's like a, NYU trained DP who's doing a shaky cam.
It's just too much thought. You're too trained at that point.
It has a different feeling to it than when it's Heather genuinely doing her best and just not knowing how to use the zoom yet. Like,
that's doing like research and creep. And I'm not gonna say too much, but like that was one of the things too that they noted is when you're watching these found footage films that we've gotten since Blair Witch, you can always tell it's in somebody else's hands. Like, even when they try and make it like, no, the actor's holding it, it's like, no, you can just you can tell that they're not. You can tell
when it's a trained DP. You can tell when it's a trained cam op. You can tell because they're good. They're good at their jobs. And it's hard when you've spent years training to be good at your job to pretend to be bad at your job. But so I genuinely think a lot of what is so unsettling and still eerie about this film is that genuine amateur quality. So just, again, credit to the actors.
Yeah, for sure.
So shot in October 1997. for 8 days, which is so short. But they filmed about 20 hours of footage, which means you're filming about 2.5 hours of footage a day, which is a lot.
Okay, literally watching this, I was like, one of my things was I halfway through, I'm like, how they still got battery life out there?
This is one of the biggest critiques of the movie.
Is it really? Oh my God. Because, but then I was like, oh, if they're only shooting like what you see, right? So say like the characters that we see, like if they're shooting 30 minutes a day, you would have the battery life to do that, and it would still get you this film. So that was like my justification for it. But
basically what Heather, the actress, says is like they the production was so, the budget was so low that the filmmakers would like pick up their batteries and recharge them for them. But they had enough room in their packs that she believes they could have actually done it.
I agree.
With carrying all of it.
Yeah.
And of course the characters are only out there for, I believe it's 4 days total, if I'm correct. Yeah. They shoot for 8. So they're,
I think it's believable.
I think it's within the realm of possibility to me. But also, anybody who's ever been on set knows shooting 2.5 hours of footage in a day is a mind-blowing amount of footage. Yeah. That's so much footage.
Yeah. Even when we visited you on set, I feel like we got so much stuff. I was like, why do we shoot?
Yeah, it's so much. Yeah, and like, whereas compared to like shooting a narrative feature, you're shooting like a couple minutes at a time.
Yeah, because everything's thought out. You're just kind of like getting shit. Getting everything you can.
Yeah, like again, on most features, you're shooting, like I think on RD I was shooting about 5 pages a day, and usually a page is a minute. So that gives you a sense of how much 2.5 hours of footage a day is. Production budget, there are a lot of different reports. I've seen, do you want to take a guess?
I have like $5,000. I don't know.
Not a bad guess, actually. Part of the way they pitched it to investors was you could fund this film for the cost of a basic economy car.
So $25,000?
It was, the general figures given for production are around 25 to 35 grand.
Okay. Yeah.
However, once you get into post-production, it rises to at least 200K. I've seen figures that are between 500 and 700 too. And then the marketing budget for this film is enormous once it gets bought by Artisan, but enormous compared to the budget of the film.
Yeah, it's hard to, on these found footage, I have some discrepancies in mine too, because it's just like the internet's a different thing.
It's
and
very
I'm like,
hard.
what's true here?
Yeah, well, and it's like you don't know. There are so many different budgets for a film depending on whether you include the pre-production.
Yeah, I don't know what they gather sometimes.
Exactly. So there's very good cases for all of those numbers being right, depending on what they're attached to.
Totally.
But shot on high 8 camcorder, like what we've got right here.
So cute.
And again, they did like a little crash course. They probably the most important prop that they got for this movie was a real tooth from a Maryland dentist.
Oh, cool. Love teeth.
Love a good tooth. All of the slime that gets put on Josh's stuff is KY jelly. And so like basically everything they're using is cheap or free.
Yeah. Effective.
It's
I like how they had a real tooth, though.
Of course.
Like, it's just such a rare, like, okay.
Well, and for that scene, the production designer had, like, created this incredible bundle, and then they were shooting this on one of the last days, because obviously they shot in sequence.
Oh, right.
And the production designer realizes they, like, radio the actors, and this is one of the only times that they, like, break scenario. And he's like, Heather, did you open the bundle? And she's like, no, I threw that shit away because that's what I do. What are you talking about? Of course I didn't open the bundle. And he's like, Heather, the bundle is so good. I need you to open the bundle. And she's like, why would I open the bundle?
I want a
bundle. I
I
want a bundle. Like, I've thrown it away from the camp. We've already shot that. It was a great scene. What do you want me to do? It's not believable for me to go back and get the bundle. And he's like, get the bundle. And she's like, fuck it, fine, I'll get the bundle. And she goes, and like that scream, all of that, completely real. She had no idea what was going to be in the bundle. She opens it up and it's a real tooth. So
wild.
Pretty powerful.
I love that. Sorry. Pause for
pause
my brain.
For awe.
Just like, Pause for awe.
Pause for awe. other performers in this besides the 3 leads were kind of a mix of non-actors and planted actors who, because the directors would kind of set up for that beginning section. They set up interviews with like the quote unquote townspeople. Yeah. Some of them were actual townspeople that they'd picked out, and some of them were people that they'd fed lines to beforehand.
I was wondering that. The mom and the kid, were they just picked? They were amazing.
Oh my God, that
her
kid.
ability to just deal with that kid and give a performance was incredible.
If I remember correctly, and I could be getting this wrong, but if I remember correctly, I believe the mom and kid were just genuine townspeople who the mom just like convinced herself that she had heard of the Blair Witch before, even though it's not a real story. Yeah. Spoiler.
And the crotchety man, I feel like, was definitely just like plucked from. Yeah, he looked like he did not want to be there.
He's grumpy.
Loved it.
But probably the most interesting of those is Patricia Decaux, or it's Decou. She's the one who plays Mary Brown, the like old lady, very witchy looking old lady. She's part of the art department. She was originally brought on as like an intern for the project. And the production designer Ben Rock gets told he has an intern, and he's like, great. And then he finds out that she's like 65, and he's like, and so he goes to meet Mary Brown, or to meet Patricia, soon to be Mary Brown. They haven't cast Mary Brown yet. He drives up. Her trailer looks exactly like it does in this, and he's like, this is Mary Brown. Yeah. We need to use this. Funny. He says in retrospect, the only thing he regrets is that he should have made her like a little fence of like sticks and twigs. Like wouldn't that have been so good?
Yes.
But like her trailer, all of that is real. Making of. Here's where we get into it. Wee. So a lot of the approach taken here, based on some questionable psychological tactics, the filmmakers called their approach method filmmaking, which I think is a great description of both the benefits and the drawbacks of this approach. I think we've probably all heard, I don't know if you've heard this, you've probably heard that when the director is, or when the tent is being shaken, it's the director outside the tent shaking it. I think like everybody's heard that Blair Witch story. A lot of this kind of general approach came from one of the producers, Greg Hale, who'd been in the military and decided he was going to use military tactics on the actors.
Of course.
So, here's a quote.
Of course.
Yeah. Yep. Here's a quote from Greg. He says, I'd gone through the Army's SEER school, he says. It stands for Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape. You go through this 4-day escape and evasion thing with guys chasing you and stuff. I knew they weren't going to kill me. I knew these guys were American soldiers playing a part. I knew that in 2.5 or 3 days this would be over. But at the time, I was terrified. That kind of sparked this thought of, well, why don't we apply this kind of total immersion scenario to the actors? If we've physically and mentally abused them enough in the process of getting them up to these intense moments at the end, then they'd be able to tap into the emotional places they wouldn't otherwise be able to tap into. We did keep them isolated. We harassed them at night. We deprived them of sleep. We made them move a lot during the day. Then at the end, we slowly fed them less and less. They never knew what was happening. They were always off balance.
Oh my God.
This is where it gets bad. Yeah. Like, it's all fun and games when you're, like, leading the actors on a scavenger hunt. Once you're, like, depriving them of food.
It's cute at first.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I thought that was one of the facts I heard, too, that they, like, followed them through and they actually slept out there and stuff. Where did, how, do you know, like, how deep they were into
They weren't super deep in the woods.
I'm like, damn, they could have, like, actually
gotten lost. A real horror movie. Yeah, truly. Well, and I know one of the things is Heather had to like ask for the directors to send VHS tapes of their earlier work because she said all of her friends and family thought she was going to film a snuff film.
Oh God.
Which, like, yeah, I can imagine. These like 2 college kids tell you that they're gonna like take you out in the woods and like method filmmaking you on this.
There's not, like a bunch, and there's something like big attached to it too. So
right, like and all of the ads are like, it's gonna be really miserable. You probably shouldn't do it. Like, it's kind of scary.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Oh, no. We were more free in the 90s.
It's truly.
We were a little less scared of things like that.
When I say they weren't SAG actors at the time,
Yeah.
There's a reason they were looking for non-SAG actors.
Jesus Christ.
And Sanchez adds into this interview, he's one of the directors, at the end, they were down to a power bar and a banana for the last 2 days per day each. That's starvation.
Yeah.
You starved
Especially,
people.
like, walking all day and stuff.
Walking all day, carrying that equipment, which is extremely heavy. Backpacking equipment is heavy enough. Filmmaking equipment on top of it. And you're giving each of them 1 power bar and 1 banana per day for 2 days?
Just crying.
Yeah.
I would just be crying the whole time.
Yeah. Like,
wild.
So
I'd be able to act. I'd get an Oscar from that role.
There you go. That's
talk
about taking people to places. So they even, when Heather's running away from the tent, they had one of the people in the art department dressed in like all white long johns with a white stocking on his face. And so when she's screaming like, "What the fuck is that?" That's one of the art department folks. They were supposed to get that on camera.
Oh, really?
And she was just like,
didn't, though.
I think it would have
showing less worked for this.
Absolutely. The less they show, the better. And we'll talk about some terrible ideas that the distributors had to show more. We'll get to that later. So Josh's screams that we hear from the woods once he's been taken, they recorded those during his days on set and then played them back from up ahead on the trail for the final night so that they're actually hearing that live in the woods.
Imagine just being a regular camper.
I can't imagine. Well, apparently they said that they'd been supposed to shoot all like 8 days in a row, and then they realized that they weren't getting anything good on the weekends because there would be like fishermen in the background and stuff, and it really kind of like ruined the spooky vibes.
Yeah. I just want to be like isolated, so that's funny.
Quote from the production designer on the house once you get to that last scene, which I still love that part.
Me too.
I think that's the best part of the movie.
Pretty iconic.
So quote, Dan had the idea for the kids' handprints from one time that he'd gone to someone's filthy house and their dogs had made a giant black smear at dog height throughout the house. He asked, what kind of residual marks would 8 children leave?
Ugh.
Which like,
gross,
grubby, right?
Ones.
Yes, gross, disgusting, grubby
Sticky
ones. And now I just want to wrap up the horrors of production by talking about everybody's favorite stickmen and how they came to be, so that we can conclude that section on a little bit of a lighter note. Here's a quote from Ben, again, our production designer. Before our shoot, Dan Myrick had created a design for the stickman. It was, as I recall, voodoo/totem inspired, bundles of sticks and twigs and needles with wraps of twine around them in specific places. It was a great idea, but the only issue for me was that I needed to make hundreds of these things, basically in the woods where they were going to be hung, and we didn't have any power tools or glue guns or really a crew to make them, and we were basically going to have to do it all in a single day. It would have taken a production line weeks to make what we need to make, so I'd have to get resourceful. Meanwhile, I'd purchased a book to use as research for the symbols which Rustin Parr would have drawn around the doors and windows of the house. There was a creepy language I'd heard of, an alphabet used by the medieval occultist Cornelius Agrippa called Transits Fluvi, which is what we used, not runes. And then I skipped ahead a little bit in his quote. And so he finds this particular room, he has a brainstorm, he's like, I'm going to try and make a stick figure based on it. And so continuing his quote, he says, we'd need 4 sticks, some twine or rope, and the only tools we'd need would be some scissors. But when it came time to fill the woods, I did something no production designer should ever do.
Oh, no.
Without bringing them other options, I just stuck to my plan. It wasn't until I saw the posters that Haxan made for the film's Sundance premiere some 2 years later that I realized they'd actually liked the design.
Oh my God, I didn't even know.
He thought that they just like ran with it because there was no time.
Oh, wow.
He had no idea that it was...
They were going to be so iconic.
So iconic, yeah.
Yeah, that was like all I knew of it at one point.
That's
just those
thick...
Which, like, it still creeps me out if you see, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like people still probably, those are like somewhere in woods randomly.
Which I have to shout out that while I was researching this, I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole of Blair Witch parodies, because obviously there's a ton. There is, from 99, the year that the film came out, there was a Scooby-Doo special called The Scooby-Doo Project.
No!
And the cover for The Scooby-Doo Project was like a Blair Witch, like Twig Witch, except it was a Scooby. like a dog shape.
That's so
it's
cute.
so cute.
I love Scooby-Doo.
I need to watch
what a
it now.
timely icon.
Yeah, I know. He's always on.
Yeah,
on
we do
top
need
of the
to watch
news.
that.
Yeah. So shout out to the
my
Scooby-Doo
God.
Project.
That's incredible. Yeah, Warren was nodding. Have you seen that? Yeah.
Oh my God.
We gotta watch this.
Good. So editing then takes them almost 8 months. And the filmmakers filmmakers go through a process that must have been really creatively fruitful and that I'm really jealous of because it's now impossible. They screened working cuts at a series of festivals to get audience feedback and kind of gauge reactions to how the film was doing as they were cutting it and trying new things with it. And then submitted to and were accepted at Sundance. Why is Siena bitter about this? Because now Sundance requires premiere status, which means they will not accept a film that has been shown at other festivals before, or will at least make it very, very, very hard unless it's been shown at like a really prestigious festival, and Sundance is the first of the year because they want to be they want to be first. And so filmmakers now do not have the quote unquote luxury of the process that was part of why Blair Witch is as good as it is, because they were able to get audience feedback without having to pay for test screenings by going to a series of smaller festivals and doing their craft and listening to the audience, which is what filmmakers should be able to do. And it's not just Sundance, it's all the major festivals.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because they want to be like the one written up of like Sundance, like premiere, like, you know what I mean? Like, I get it. But it's not for filmmakers. You know what I mean? The thing. So, like even really like good regional festivals will do the same, where they're like, if you've premiered at another in our region, like if you premiered at another festival in the Southwest, we won't take you. So it's interesting. I also feel like Sundance too now has turned into such like a celebrity like shit show that it doesn't even feel like indie filmmaking anymore. I agree. It feels like it's so Hollywood now. Yeah, I mean like when fucking Daisy Ridley movies are premiering at Sundance, like most of the stuff you see, it's like Adam Driver and it's like a Coppola. I'm like, Coppola. Yeah, why that's not what Sundance is for. I don't think he needs like he doesn't need it. So that's man. Yeah. Yep. That's very interesting. Like I'm so glad for them that they got that chance, because every filmmaker should. Yeah. I'm also bitter because every time people now use films like the Blair Witch Project as an example of like anybody can do it. And the directors do this too. They'll give interviews saying like, take us as a success story, take us as inspiration. If we could do it, anybody could do it. They had a lot of advantages that filmmakers now are not afforded. Well, also, yes, you can do it. Doesn't mean it's going to get the success that we got. So I think that's a different, like, you can say that all day long. Like, yeah, 100%. You can do it, but it doesn't mean you're going to get anything from it. So, yeah. So, moving on. I just wanted to throw out here another quote from Heather, kind of wrapping up all of this talk about sort of how the film was made, how the actors were treated. She said, as Greg Hale, the producer, the one who went to the SEER training, yes. Said to us, quote, "Your safety is our issue, your comfortability is not." Which... Same. Yeah. But she goes on to say, but I have to say we were actually better looked after than on some indie productions I've been on. They had to, otherwise everything would have fallen apart. So would have died too. Yeah. Had a mental breakdown. It's complicated. I don't think they were treated well. I also know there are a lot of films that have treated actors even worse. Right. So it's very complicated. Moving on to the release. I mentioned that the budget by the end of post was somewhere between 200 and 500 probably. Right. Artisan comes in, buys it for $1 million. Wow. So they make a great profit off of it. Then goes on to spend $6 to $8 million just on domestic marketing, just in the U.S. So again, $8.99. And do you want to guess how much this film made? I'm gonna say like $25 million. So much more. Oh, really? Like so much more. 75. Try 249. Holy shit. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Wow, I grossly underestimated that. But again, that's just a lot. It's a lot. But let's take a step back and say again, this is part of why when this gets used as an example of like scrappy indie filmmakers make it big,
The reason it got to 249 was because a major studio spent $8 million marketing it.
And who was doing stuff for this level of project then?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, we didn't have marketing
It was
like
the
this.
first like this. It was the first of its kind.
Yeah.
And so it had the element of surprise on its side.
Yeah.
So it's just, all of this requires a lot of context, is the point I'm trying to make.
And it was a time, I would say, like, as, you know, God, how old was I then? Like 12-ish, 11-ish? I don't know. I was really into filmmaking on a camcorder, and, like, that's what I spent weekends doing with friends in our woods. Like, that was...
Yeah.
We'd sleepovers, and we would do that. We would make, like, weird films.
The Lesbian Witch Project.
Right, truly. Truly. There's probably a cut out there that exists. Just me and the camcorder. But, like, that was such a time.
Alan Allway Long John's running past the camera.
No, it was me and my Old Navy, like, sweater vest.
Yeah, tracks. Very gay of you.
Yeah, my olive green fleece vest.
Yep. So gay.
But you know what I mean? Like, that was a time, too, where all of us, I think, were taking, and, like, you know, those of us who liked creating stuff, like, it felt so visceral and real, and, like, you didn't have anything. So to see marketing like that, it did feel... real for us, you know, and it was like just start of like the internet, I think, and being on there, and even websites that would like start to push that stuff later too. So it was like, you're never gonna get a time like that again where we're
it's
not knowing what like not seeing something for the first time. It just can't happen.
As I said, this is a totally unique film. The way it's shot, the way it's funded, the way it's released, everything about this film
on their part
never gonna happen again.
Do you have any information on like why they decided to market it that way?
We're gonna talk a little bit more about it. Yeah, I've got some more marketing specifics on the way. No. But before we get to the things that they got right in marketing, we're going to talk about what they got wrong.
Oh, yes. Please tell.
Because when Artisan bought this for $1 million, they wanted to change the ending, the best part of the movie.
Yeah, it's so iconic.
It's so good.
Okay.
Because test audiences found it confusing.
Okay.
Test audiences always find good things confusing. I'm sorry. Test audiences are dumb. So the crew is paid to go back and shoot 4 alternate endings, including some interview footage from the beginning, which does include the Parr story, which is something that ends up making it into the theatrical release. That's the only part of the reshot stuff that makes it in. And I do think that's helpful because it contextualizes why he's standing in the corner, right? But... So they agree to keep the original ending eventually. Myrick agrees it's the right choice because he says... What makes us fearful is something that's out of the ordinary, unexplained. The first ending kept the audience off balance. It challenged our real-world conventions, and that's what made it scary. However, I do have a list of some of the proposed alternate endings that they shot, which...
Oh my god, I have some of those too!
Oh, amazing! Which, let me also just point out, the alternate endings, Heather says that they probably spent more shooting those, like, couple of days of alternate endings than they did on the entire rest of the film.
I believe it, because if they kind of just like you know filmed whatever and now they have to have these like scripted things, it's gonna be different.
Now Artisan's bringing in like a fucking techno crane, I think. Like, thank God they didn't use most of what they shot.
There's a swooping shot.
Let's talk about some of these. So one was Mike facing the camera as if in a trance, surrounded by like a field of stickmen. One was Mike hanging by the neck. One was Mike hovering inexplicably in the air.
Oh.
And the worst of all, Al, which they definitely shot, although I wasn't able to find it. I'm going to do more research. Mike crucified on a giant stickman with stickmen hanging everywhere.
So lame.
It's so bad.
I mean, him hovering would have been, but that would look cheesy.
It would look cheesy. It would be so out of touch with the rest of the movie.
Yeah, which feels...
They're all terrible. They're all terrible. None are as bad as burning on a giant stick man, but...
I mean, him with, like, stick men around him would have been cool. That would have been the poster.
Yeah,
so
that would have been the
poster.
Been our eye.
But, yeah.
Yep. Terrible. Terrible.
Waste of time.
Yeah. Part of what the production designer kind of says in retrospect to contextualize the marketing that I think is a really good point is that this is basically one of the things that the marketing team at Artisan did. And it was John Hedgeman and Amaret Jones was to continually find a new story to talk about. So at first it was about the film itself, and then it was about the success of the film, and then it was about, wait, the actors are actually alive, and then it was about, this is getting parodied all the time, everybody's sick of the Blair Witch Project. Like, whatever the thing was, they made that the story of the week. And so it continued to be in the news from Sundance through like October. Which is a hard thing for a movie to do before or since. Of course, premiered at Sundance midnight, listed all 3 leads as missing or deceased. I'm pretty have you heard about that?
No.
Oh, good. I was trying to keep this under wraps on the off chance that I didn't know about. I did not. This. So part of what the filmmakers did was make all of the actors pretend to be dead.
I love that.
It sounds fun at first.
Well, yeah. Well, it's their real names. I'm sure, like, it caused like a panic.
Sure did.
Oh my god, I fucking eats though.
So
that's fucking great.
So they show up at Sundance with missing posters for the actors, put them up all around town, which is part of why all of the Sundance releases sell out, because everybody's walking around Sundance seeing these missing posters. And so everybody really does think it's real.
I love that.
The 3 leads weren't allowed to attend the Cannes premiere. They weren't allowed to give interviews. All of these restrictions only get dropped after the film's theatrical release in the summer. You've probably heard, we're getting more into it. You've probably heard that the actors weren't properly compensated for the film's success.
Oh, I kind of figured. I didn't hear that, but I fucking figured.
You can kind of tell, right?
Yeah.
Heather convinced the other 2 to join a lawsuit, which awarded each of them an additional $300K. But there are new updates to the story, because in 2024, all 3 of them had a reunion, gave an interview looking back on the experience, and Heather sits down and tells this horrible story of being so poor that her car breaks down on her way to her temp job in front of a billboard of her face.
I mean, isn't that Hollywood?
They had to pay their own travel to Sundance.
But they couldn't even, like,
and they
really?
They had to like basically hide because they're supposed to be dead. You have to pay. They pay their own travel. And from that same article, I hate this so much. From that same article, to commemorate the film breaking $100 million at the domestic box office, domestic alone, Artisan sent each actor a fruit basket.
The way I would just let the fruit rot and then like
send
put
it back
into their like car or
yes.
their office
yes.
or like hide it in their vents. It would
smush it through their mailbox.
I absolutely fucking would.
Yeah. Isn't that atrocious?
Bro, even if you gave him $25,000, that is a drop.
Yeah, a drop.
Like, you wouldn't even notice that missing.
Yeah, yeah. What I read, and I'm not 100% sure this is accurate, but what I read is that they, in their original contracts, were awarded 1% if the film ever turned a profit, 1% each, which
I can't math that.
It's
got to be a decent amount of money. Is it 200,000? I can't do the math.
I think it should be around 300,000. So, like, I think they did eventually get what the contract said, but you know, a typical actor contract,
1%.
Usually, you're gonna, as an actor, as a lead actor, you're probably gonna be getting at least 5%.
I was gonna say,
if not like up to like 15 to 20.
5% seems like a normal thing.
It is. So that's not great.
Yeah.
When they announced in 2024 that they're doing a reboot for the 25th anniversary, nobody gave the original actors notice. Didn't contact them, didn't say anything. So they found out when everybody else did, got together, wrote an open letter requesting consultation on any future installments and equivalent pay to what they would have been awarded had they been SAG actors at the time, which a very reasonable request to make. Unfortunately,
yeah, of course.
Because they signed the contract and weren't SAG actors, even though SAG is supportive of them, they're like, all you can do is appeal to fairness. There's not like, and Lord knows studios don't love an appeal to fairness.
Yeah.
Quote from Heather. I had an interview with the Philadelphia Inquirer where I said something like, I'm the poorest famous person in America right now. And Artisan reached out to tell me I can't say that. Yeah. It's bad.
Wow.
It's bad.
What a bunch of cunts, man.
And Heather in particular had an especially hard time because people are misogynists and love to hate on women and particularly women. Like strong female artists, I think. When people thought she was just playing herself. And meanwhile, at the same time that she's getting this enormous public backlash with everybody talking about how fucking annoying Heather is and it's using her real name, people are sending her mom sympathy cards thinking she's actually dead.
Oh my god.
It's so bad, Al.
This is so fucked up.
It's so fucked up. This movie it's so fucked up.
I had no idea.
One person at a Q&A tells Heather that they hated her so much in the movie that they wanted to strangle her. This is just like normal stuff that she's having to respond to every day.
My jaw's staying in place. I don't know. I'm actually shocked.
No, but like it's like
that way about us.
Yeah, and she responds, and this is like from the time. This is, I think, 99 or 2000. She says, I think it is, even now, looking at being a woman in LA and the whole Hollywood structure to be taken seriously and not just as a little mindless bimbo, you have to work extra hard and you have to prove yourself doubly. It's not as easy, and I think that's part of what builds my character in this movie is that she has a job to do and you're either with her or against her. And I think that is genuinely a lot of why people find her character so grating is that she's a
little annoying.
She is a little annoying.
But also she like has the points. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's not like she's annoying and also just like bumbly or whatever. Like she is literally trying to hold the three of them together in a way that the other guys can't.
Literally throwing the map away.
Yeah, and they're like having tantrums and stuff and like So I mean, it's Hollywood. I don't know what to say.
Yep. So it's just I just feel so bad for Heather. This currently holds an 86% from critics, only a 57% from audiences on Rotten Tomatoes, which I think is super interesting. Are they the opposite?
No. Mine's kind of the same. Where
Interesting.
So, oh my god, wild that these are similar.
That's a lot of part of why I love found footage, and also part of why I think it's a genre that tends to be more critic heavy than audience heavy is because it is so much more experimental. Like it's so much about the filmmaking and about the camera and what it means to be filming things. Like it gets very meta very quickly. And so you can sneak a lot of like art school bullshit in.
And they're just like, I actually get it. You all don't. That's actually what I think it is.
So it's like it's as a film bro, it's a very film bro genre, right? And
that's so funny.
And because of that, I think there were a lot of people who watched Blair Witch being told like this is the scariest movie I've ever seen, and then you never see the witch, you never really see any blood, you see one real tooth. And so there are a lot of people who I think are let down because of the expectations that are set for it. I did have to shout out a couple of specific critic reviews and interactions. Andrew Saris, who's a particular favorite of mine, gave this catty gold saying he called it the ultimate triumph of the Sundance scam. Make a heartless home movie, get enough critics to blurb in unison, scary, and watch the suckers flock to be fleeced.
That eats.
Isn't that amazing? Watch the suckers flock to be fleeced.
Yeah, that's so funny.
That's, oh my god, it's so good. But on the other hand, story from Sanchez, the director, he says, I met Roger Ebert. He shook my hand. He had a little mayonnaise on his hand. It was Roger Ebert, one of my heroes. He interviewed us later at Cannes and was just this film geek. He loved the story of us coming from nowhere, from Maryland, making this movie out of nothing and experimenting. And I think that gives you a really good picture of the two different reactions.
That's so funny.
I also just loved the image of Roger Ebert shaking your hand covered in mayonnaise.
I'm telling y'all, celebrities, I would say they're just like us. They're worse.
They're worse. They're like us, only worse.
Don't put them on pedestals or anywhere near one.
This film was immediately a festival darling, wins the John Cassavetes Award for Best First Feature Made Under $500K at the Independent Spirits. It did earn a few worst nominations too, which I'd like to chalk up to like the slow burn of it all for the most part, but Heather gets a Worst Actress Razzie, which I think is cruel. I think she's doing an incredible job. It got a Stinkers nomination for Worst Screen Debut, too. And this is what I had to shout this out. The nomination went to Heather, Michael, Josh, The Stick People, and The World's Longest Running Batteries, which is the episode band name.
Longest running batteries.
Heather, Michael, Josh, the stick people in the world's longest running batteries.
Oh my god, that's so good. That's what you were saying the other. That's what you were teeing up yesterday. Mm-hmm. Oh my god, that's amazing.
And this film immediately become stick people in the world's longest running batteries.
Yeah, it's great.
By November of 99, so many people are going to visit the historic house where the ending is shot that it has to be demolished because people keep going and breaking chunks off it as souvenirs. So it doesn't exist anymore.
We need to get it together.
We aren't doing great, guys.
So we don't have nice things.
Happy 25. We're doing real bad. So talking about the influence, I mentioned that this is kind of the film that really gets you shaky cam in this way. Mm-hmm. Because of that, there were a lot of people who threw up in the theater watching this because people weren't used to this style of filmmaking.
I was astounded by that because like people like even the substance, people like leaving in droves and shit too, and I'm just like, I've never once.
It's never happened to me.
Yeah.
Maybe one day it will.
Well, you need to get your equilibrium checked out if you're getting that nauseous from stuff like that on a big scale, you know?
I agree. You've got a seat right there. Hold on to the arms. Like, what are you doing?
Your seat's not moving anymore.
Yeah. This is also, the thing that this film is really famous for to this day, I think, is the fact that it was the first to use the internet to market in this way, to this extent. Obviously, American Psycho does kind of a similar thing about a year later. But it wasn't in such a, reality blurring, all-encompassing way.
Viral. It went viral in a way.
It did.
It's one of the first things to probably do that.
It was. It went viral before viral was even terminology that we used.
For sure.
And so, they launched a website in 98 before Sundance, which, according to at least one of the sources that I found, in 98, the producers had already hired a PR team, which tells me there's maybe more money coming into the producers at this point than they're letting on, because that's before it was bought by Artisan. So just something important to consider. And that's when they launched the website, is mid-98, and it has fake police reports. They, handing out flyers. They hired actors to pose as officers, giving testimonials about the case. They shared childhood photos of the actual actors as part of their missing pages, which, is only going to add to all the people writing Heather's mom being like, sorry, your kid's dead.
We didn't have Reddit at the time to, fact check
shit. There's no fact checking at this point.
Oh, my God.
By August of 99, the site had over 160 million views. Wow. In 99. So it's
anyone who had access to the internet
was looking at the Blair Witch Project.
Library,
which I tried to find it. I couldn't find a good archived version of the website. I'm sure somebody out there has preserved it, but my usual sources were not successful. Obviously, there are a ton of spin-offs. There's YA novels, there are tie-in dossiers, there's comic books, video games, parodies. There's the Scooby-Doo special. There's sequels. There's Blair Witch Book of Shadows, and there's also Blair Witch, just Blair Witch from 2016, which was directed by Adam Wingard of You're Next and follows Heather's brother. So I feel like could potentially be up Al's alley. Your Al-y,
my alley.
I'm sorry, guys. There was also a new version announced in development at Lionsgate with Jason Blum in April of last year, which is why they released the open letter, the actors. So I'm keeping an eye on that story to see what happens. It'll be interesting to see where this goes. It was a big influence on a lot of other films that went on to do internet marketing. Eli Roth took a lot out of this book for Cabin in the Woods. Let's see. I feel like I've covered most of that. I'll just wrap with a couple of brief little watch notes.
You're gonna wrap? I'm kidding.
Did you see the look of horror in my eyes for a second?
Do a white rap. Do a white rap.
No!
It can live on the internet forever.
Oh, God. Just like the Blair Witch Project, except that now its website's down. I just had to shout out Heather at the beginning, like day one, before anything bad has happened,
Oh, no.
going, I'm the director. At this point, I fucking have to. Do we have any weed? As just the most me on set thing.
And
I've
also full
ever
circle,
heard.
because then she goes into growing.
There you go. Exactly. It's all, there's a happy ending for Heather at the end of the weedy rainbow. Let's see. I loved the no redneck is this creative line. Just so good. Also when I told my partner that the KY jelly is what the witch was using, she said, so the Blair Witch is a sex worker. Good for her.
Good for her.
So it just had to end with good for her.
Truly.
Thank God for the Blair Witch sex worker. We love her. She's an icon. I have very mixed feelings on this movie.
Yeah.
Do you feel different about it on the other end of the conversation?
I mean, it's one of those films that I think I always as a kind of like a genre buster, you know, for kind of like leading this whole wave of stuff. I appreciate it. It feels better. I like hearing the behind the scenes because again, it is kind of that double-edged sword though, because I'm like I feel like I appreciate it more, but I'm also like what the fuck. But I don't know. We've said what the fuck on a lot of ways that things have been made in the movies we've covered, but I don't know. I appreciate it.
I'm glad
it
exists.
Look at what it did.
Yeah.
I don't know. And for them to say like anyone can do this.
Again,
anyone can do it.
Yeah.
Not every film not the chances of this happening again in that way is zero.
It's not gonna happen.
It's zero.
Not like that.
For that alone, like I love found footage films. I mean, it gave me I'm so excited to talk about Creep. I feel like I've been bugging you. So like it gave me Creep, and it gave me the VHS movies, and it gave us Wreck, and it gave us like all these things that I fucking love. So for that, like, I love it. I will probably, unless someone like sits me down, I will probably never watch this movie again. I think I watched it the 2 times. I will say, from this being my second watch, I remembered like.
Wow.
I feel like I remember the bulk of it.
Interesting.
So I think it's like a film that sticks with you anyways.
It does. That's true.
That ending's so fucking good.
Great.
I think there's like, I think even VHS has some because it's anthology. Like there's I feel like there's like even like just nods and callbacks. Even I think the ritual.
Yeah.
You know, with that house, I just feel like there's like things that are just inherently nod back to it.
Everything.
It's a movie called Shrooms, I think, that came out a while ago too. Like,
I feel like I heard good things about
forest,
that. Actually.
I don't know, like forest found footage. I don't know, or just like forest horror. It's just you think of this movie.
Yeah, it
is
completely
what it is.
Defined what happened in early 2000s horror.
Yeah,
like we would have had a completely different 2000 to 2010.
Yeah,
were it not for the Blair Witch in
and the
99.
acting holds. I don't know. I just. A little bit of a snooze fest for me, and I don't think it's an attention span thing. Cause I love a slow.
Love a slow burn,
film, but
didn't scare me. Just stressed me out in the wrong way.
Yeah, stressful for sure.
Stressful.
Like I think of like being in that situation. I'd have like I'm like, well, it's one of those films too where you're like, who would I be in this?
Yeah,
and I think that's what like is intriguing about it is it makes you think, and even with the ending, it leaves you sitting there like.
It takes a
about
second.
It.
Yeah.
So for that, but. I'm glad we feel the same.
Me
I'm
too.
sorry that you liked it less.
I was
time.
so excited to revisit it, particularly because it is this like early film class moment for me and for a lot of people. I think, I'm so
curious to hear what you all think about it too. Like we definitely, I want to like invite you all to.
Yeah, because like I know it has people who absolutely love it, and like
I want to hear why.
Yeah,
for both.
I would
not
love.
Judging.
I would love for you to change my mind. I would love for you to change my mind.
Yeah. So, yay.
Yeah. Let's take a break and then talk about one we both liked better.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
Know how much you love stories of horror and gore. Meet our sponsor, Beasley Books, the independent bookstore owned by author George R.R. Martin in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Beasley specializes in autographed titles, rare editions, and speculative fiction, which includes sci-fi, fantasy, and of course, horror. You can find many authors whose adaptations we've covered at Beasley, including Stephen King, Clive Barker, and more, alongside the likes of Nick Cutter, Shirley Jackson, and Anne Rice. Visit the Santa Fe storefront Wednesday through Sunday. at 418 Montezuma. Or shop online anytime. I don't know why I'm Irish now. But you can find them at BeasleyBooks.com or on Instagram at BeasleyBooks418. And make sure you use code SPLICE10 to save 10% when you shop online. SPLICE10 to save 10% when you shop online. Bye.
And we're back.
Me just hovering right in there.
I lost my notes. I needed to find my notes before we started.
My notes.
Not
I
my
lost
notes.
my notes.
I can't see anything without my notes. We were talking about the Scooby Project.
We were,
on the break.
yeah. We watched the little teaser for that. It's so cute.
I'm so hungry.
I'm so hungry. Oh my gosh, we're here.
We're talking about Creep.
I was gonna say too before we jump into it. One of the things we forgot to say and we prepped for was
we sure did.
We at the Jean Cocteau Cinema are going to be playing American Psycho, but it's gonna be with Andrea Abetti of the Kitchen Table Santa Fe. She does a dinner and movie program, so it's like a bundle deal where you get dinner before and then you watch a movie. And she's fucking awesome, and she like watches the movie, I would say, on certain substances, and then like puts together like a themed menu based on the film. So American Psycho should be fun. So tickets, it's gonna be Valentine's Day weekend, I believe, and tickets should be on sale, but if not, follow us on Jean Cocteau Cinema.
They'll be up soon.
Instagram and all the places.
If
so
they're
we'll
not
post.
already up, they'll be up soon.
Post, yeah. Or check the website now and they're there. Ta-da!
Hey, there you go.
So, yeah, I want to give a shout for people to see that on the big screen. And now...
And now...
to our regular
Creep.
scheduled... Yeah. Time for Creep.
Time to Creep. Do you remember the Lonely Island song, The Creep?
Fucking yes, I do.
Okay,
with
thank
Yorma
God.
and Akiva, absolutely.
Yes.
Gotta keep it in my mic. I still do that little dance.
Yes.
Yeah.
With John Waters, too. What a time to be alive. Oh, God.
I said we used to be a country is my new thing.
Truly.
We used to be a country.
We used to be a country.
Yeah, so Creep 2014, I finally
not
bugged
seen.
you long enough
Yeah.
we paired this. You haven't seen it before.
I had a great time.
Did you know of this before? Or
I-
in this?
No, I don't think so. I don't think this one crossed my radar at the
Yeah.
time it came out in 2014.
Yeah.
I mean, in 2014, I was not doing a great job of keeping up with
Movies.
recent releases.
Yeah, same actually.
I was watching a lot of stuff from the 70s, as I still am.
Yeah.
But I don't think I knew about this until you mentioned it to me.
Got it.
And I think it was in the context of Mumblegore that you first brought it up.
Yeah, we mentioned it on the podcast.
Yeah, so I think does this count as Mumblegore?
It's cited as one across a few places. I don't really talk about that in this.
Well, if so, it's my first Mumblegore. So yeah.
And then, do you know anything about like the Duplass brothers and Mark Duplass? Like, are you
Educate me. Like I know only the tiniest little bit.
I'll get into. Well, I don't even know how to like explain. So Mark Duplass, I forget his brother's name. I have it written here somewhere. I've totally forgotten.
Is that
Jay, right?
Yeah. Okay.
They have their own production company. They kind of together the vibe that they get, which we will talk about that in Creep too. Creep is no exception. Kind of do very. I want to say they really like to pull character and pull from the heart, and they really care about capturing real moments in all of their work. I would say across.
Interesting.
A shout out to I think I've mentioned it the last two episodes. One of my favorite shows from the Duplass brothers it just ended its third season, called Somebody Somewhere.
Oh, you did talk about this.
And it's just like. And it's not horror, but it's just I think for me it kind of sums up like who he is and they are as like creators, which is they sit in these moments of reality, for better or worse in the case of Creep as well, and kind of just let you live in these moments that it kind of just feels like you're there with the characters. And so I would say like. For me, I pretty much love anything they touch. I think it's just always good because they always come from this very like real, raw place, and I just think they're like good as far as Hollywood goes. Like they seem like good people, and their love of filmmaking and making things that they want to make and I end on a quote from him, like, it comes from a place of like, we're gonna do this no matter what because we love it.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And so I feel like you would really like them as filmmakers.
That tone feels like it comes across kind of in the ethos behind the filmmaking.
Yeah, for sure. So that's kind of just my tea. But yeah, I'm very excited that you kind of got to.
Yeah, I had a really good time with it. Particularly, I think Mark Duplass is what makes it. His performance is what makes it. And
he's such a creep.
He's so tubby time.
I was we were gonna make a joke about that today. Yeah, tubby time. I know, wild. I don't even I wish I could just sit and talk about
the feet.
Oh my god, and just the reaction. It's awkward. This film, if you have not seen it, just please. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's
please.
Awkward horror.
It's so awkward.
Yeah.
Again, you sit in these moments for better or worse.
Yeah. It's like elevating discomfort to terror.
Yeah, almost. This one makes you just
yeah.
You're like, I need to go get a drink.
Yeah. Really I just feel grimy after watching these people interact.
Yeah. But you liked?
I liked it. Yeah.
Oh my god.
I really enjoyed it.
That makes me so happy. I'm going to start with a fun fact. So this was when you asked if I had a tidbit, and I was like, no, I want to. So this was, once again, I didn't really know much about this film. I'm going to kind of tee off some of my sources, mainly quotes, I would say. There was no making of. A lot of it was just interviews where it was just written out the interviewer asking a question, just a full blurb. So I have a lot of quotes, unfortunately. Sorry. But comingsoon.net, Bloody Disgusting, Austin Chronicle is the main sources that I used for this. So I was happy to kind of I didn't think there was going to be as much. The more I dug and the more I read over and over and over interviews, I found pieces. So at first my notes were 3 pages long, and I was like, but I got them to 7, so
Love
maybe
that
shorter. But so fun fact: the movie was actually renamed. It was not originally called Creep. It was called Peachfuzz, which, as we learn, is the wolf mask in this, or the wolf character.
I honestly feel like that's almost a better name.
Peachfuzz. Yeah. Well, here's why they didn't keep it that way. They changed it because the title Creep would allow audiences, or they thought audiences would question kind of which of the two main characters was actually the weirdo creep to start. And so to the title change, Mark Duplass said, quote, "If you call the film Peachfuzz, you spend the first half hour trying to figure out why the movie is called Peachfuzz."
That's fair.
And so you wouldn't be able to pay attention to the very intricate details of this film, which is you need to watch everything.
That's a very good point.
He goes on to say, "This is a very subtle, strange movie." Yes. If you call the movie Creep, you walk in knowing a little bit about what to expect. So you kind of shut that part of your brain off of the macro and focus on the micro, which is who is the creep and how creepy is this going to get, which was a lot of fun for them, is what they said. So I kind of love that he had the wherewithal to be we need to
a good case.
Be vague about
this. That's a good case. I still don't think Creep itself is a great title, just because it doesn't.
There's other movies called Creep I found out while researching too. I don't know. I kind of love the simplicity of it.
That's fair. I feel like it doesn't tell you a whole lot about.
I think they wanted that though.
Yeah, it's fair.
It's truly. What would you have named it? Peachfuzz.
Peachfuzz. It's scary.
Tubby time.
Honestly, a horror movie named Tubby Time. I want to find out what the scary Tubby Time is.
You know what?
Yeah.
Ugh.
That's creepy.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
That's creepy.
So, this film's rated R, and it's classified as a horror thriller. But kind of, I thought it was interesting. Duplass kind of speaks about it being a horror film. He says, if you want to see a movie like Creep, it's because you have two very relationship-oriented filmmakers guided by Jason Blum. So what you're going to get is a movie that does not follow all of the rules of what a horror movie is. So I would say it kind of
it's a good way of putting
sets up kind of where their entry point was for this film is they don't consider themselves horror filmmakers. If you look at their roster of things that they've either Mark's acted in or produced or written, this is very kind of out of that, but with his flavor on it. I don't know. Flavor dust. Gross. That's creepy.
Creepy, yeah.
Description.
With his peach fuzz on it.
Ugh. sentient hair.
Yeah.
A description of this is a young videographer answers an online ad for a one-day job in a remote town to record the last messages of a dying man. When he notices the man's odd behavior, he starts to question his intentions. Which honestly, like half this film, I think I've just like, as like AFAB people, there's absolutely no way I would be out the door immediately.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And I'm just like, men.
It absolutely
really is
needs to be a male videographer. It
wouldn't.
Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
completely unbelievable.
Yeah. I'm like, we have the wherewithal.
I honestly think a huge part of why this film works is because there are so few women in it.
Oh,
and when women are present, they're mainly just like voices on the phone trying to tell the men not to make stupid decisions that they then go on and make.
Yeah. It has to be.
Yeah.
Men.
Yeah. Yep.
Director is Patrick Bryce. And it was written by Patrick and Mark.
Okay.
Patrick has worked with Mark on other projects, including the Creep Tapes, which just came out in November of 2024, which I've not watched yet. I really want to revisit the second Creep, and then the Creep Tapes. I thought it was going to be a feature, but it is a mini series. So at the very end of Creep, you see all those tapes.
Yeah.
It's just each episode, and it looks. The trailers I've watched, it reminds me very much of like What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh, that's
in
fun.
tone.
That's fun.
Like I think he like comes down in a like a Dracula cape in like the teaser and stuff too, and like makes joke. It's very much up my.
Love that.
I love this kind of humor.
Yeah, there's like a little bit of absurdism to it almost. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I feel like it really takes what Blair Witch goal was, and then actually the Christopher Guest of it all, and meshes it
because
together.
It's so funny. Like, Creep is really funny.
So funny.
Yeah,
it's my kind of like fucked up awkward humor.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I love it. Mark Duplass. If you don't know, the things he's done is insane. The amount of work he's done is insane. But like some things people might recognize him from if you don't know him. The Morning Show, most recently acted in. Big Mouth. I said I knew him. I first learned of him in 2005 for the Puffy Chair. I remember going to, I think, Blockbuster at the time and renting that. So he was kind of like an indie. He's always been like that indie filmmaker guy for me. He's also like I said, producer of Somebody Somewhere. He's a writer, producer, director, actor, co-owner of the Duplass Brothers Productions with his brother. So I don't know. I love him so much. I just started following him on TikTok. R.I.P. Probably by the time this comes out.
Yeah, who knows? We'll find out.
So it's obviously starring Mark Duplass as Joseph, a.k.a. Peachfuzz. We have Patrick Bryce as Aaron. We have Katie Asselton. That can't be right. But as Angela on the phone, she also has worked on The Morning Show and Bombshell, which Mark Duplass is in those as well. So I feel like they've all kind of worked together at some point again or before. So script and conception of this, I thought was really cool. I didn't know there was going to be like so much backstory for it. So Mark Duplass and Patrick Bryce actually became friends because Bryce's wife was the nanny for Duplass's kids at the time. Oh, so they met through just like a weird Hollywood like nanny situation.
Wow.
And the movie was actually based on conversations between the two of them and was inspired by Bryce's experience on Craigslist. What a wild time we used to live in.
Truly.
I miss old Craigslist.
New Craigslist is a very different Craigslist.
I don't even go on it anymore. I used to go on all the time for
it's
stuff. They also cited, again with movie references, My Dinner with Andre, which love.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I love that both of these, I mean, I think it also makes sense for the genre, for found footage horror, but that they're citing things that are not horror. Yeah.
They do say two more horror, though. So My Dinner with Andre, love, gotta revisit. So Misery and Fatal Attraction.
Oh, so very thrillery.
Yeah. And I also think like Annie as a character. You know what I mean? Just like character study of these two characters, and that's it. You know what I mean? There's no outside. It's just kind of. And I haven't seen Fatal Attraction, so I can't speak to that. Okay, cool.
I know what it's about, but
Bunny in a Pot.
Bunny in a Pot. Yep.
I made a poster of those.
Sure did.
So Duplass said he had also seen Patrick's documentary called Maurice, where he follows a strange man who owns the last porn theater in Paris, which now I really want to watch this. Yeah. And he said that Patrick, quote, has a way of bringing things out in people, and we love weird people. Same.
Yes.
We're always talking about people who have too much personal space with you or a little oversharing. So they kind of like bonded on that. Again, I think Patrick making like documentaries and stuff, it's just character study. And that was like in film school, that was, as a director, that was like my favorite thing to do. I loved character study films, which makes sense. Everyone thought my films were really boring. I was like, okay, let's move the fuck on. But I'm like, I took so many psychology classes and like,
that's the juicy stuff.
Yeah, just sitting people in a room and like watching how they react to one another. I don't know.
Which again, my dinner with Andre makes perfect sense. Yeah.
He goes on. Oh, yeah. So, like I said, they built Creep off of a series of the conversations the two of them had together. And Duplass said, quote, what if we put together an outline and start shooting this thing? We accepted it was going to be a mess and basically refine it while they were kind of shooting, opposed to refining it while they were writing. So they kind of entered in with a skeleton. He called it an arts and crafts project,
Oh my God, I love it.
which was very liberating and fun for them. They said for a year and a half, we'd shoot, edit, show it to people, see where it landed, shoot, come back, and like kind of do that process over and over, which is why I have discrepancies on the time frame of production. And I also have for budget, which I'm going to get into now. So the budget was so hard to find online. If you watch through the credits, they thank like Nick Kroll's and like the thanks and stuff. So I'm wondering if it was like personally funded to start.
That makes sense.
And then kind of like you were saying, that's why I'm like, you teed me
Lots
up
of
for so parallels
yeah.
that I think it probably has a budget. But can you guess what the wild budget that is everywhere online? And I could not find another number. I'm pretty sure he just out of
$10K.
$500 is what they cite.
Nah.
I know. That's why I'm like, but
Nah.
everywhere they have. And so I'm wondering if it's because he, I don't know, spent $500 on paperwork and then like fronted it all. Isn't that weird?
I mean, if nothing else, you would spend more than that just feeding people.
Well, they didn't really have a crew. That's why. So
how many people, do we know how many people were on set on the
On set, again, discrepancies, but it was really just the two of them.
Wow. And I'm assuming at least a cinematographer, probably not. Was it all just on sticks and they were just setting it up themselves?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. So yeah, we'll get into that too.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I really do think. So I'm thinking the 500 comes from what was, and we'll get into the production of like how many days, but I think it was that initial. And when they had to do the reshoots and screen and this and this, I think that's where the budget. So I think maybe it started 500 is what I'm thinking. So if anyone knows
very similar
or can find an article, please send it to me because I was like, scouring and casting a net out, couldn't find anything. So I have a little bit about how they shopped for a studio. So again, they kind of just like filmed this. So early on, they talked about releasing Creep through Universal, to which Duplass said, but when they tested the film and realized what people connected with, what people were comfortable with, and what people were not comfortable with, we realized we were going to have to do X, Y, and Z to this movie to make it palatable to a larger audience, which he said that the changes they would have to made wouldn't have been terrible. And they actually think it would have made the film like good. You know what I mean? Like they weren't against the changes, but he said it kind of would have rubbed, what did he say? Like scrubbed out a lot of the quote especially unique and frankly weird edges off of it, and Jason Blum felt the same way. So I'm glad that I
think that's the right call,
trusted themselves. So they moved from Universal to Blumhouse with Jason Blum. And Mark said, quote, what if we could marry the Blumhouse label with the Duplass label and see what that could bring in? So they made a really good choice. Again, that's why I love them. I feel like they know what they want, and they're like, even if this doesn't make us money, like it's going to be our project that we're proud of.
We've got to keep the weird bits.
So they took it to Blumhouse, which they said it didn't start off great because at the time Jason Blum said he was so fucking burnt out over found footage films at the time, because you got to think like all the paranormal activities,
there's so much,
all the things. So he was like, I'm gonna look at it but I don't want another fucking found footage film. So it's like, okay, great. So Duplass recalled like when Jason told him that he had seen every piece of shit found footage horror movie, because it's like what people were coming to him for at the time.
It's so cheap to make.
Yeah, and he was just like, I'm fucking over it. Love that he took a beat.
Amazing. Yep.
So Jason Blum watches it, and after watching some of the scenes, he actually called them immediately up and was like, "We have to do this. It's the only one where it makes sense."
Interesting.
So I'm assuming because of the way it kind of unfolds to the point of Blair Witch, and then the found footage we were getting at the time, the way in which they shot this felt authentic, and I think Blum was like, "This is different. I get it."
It doesn't feel like it's got a giant crew behind it.
Yeah, it's not acting.
Yeah.
So Duplass said that's where they kind of brought they kind of like meshed these genres together, which I talked about earlier. He said in many ways we were ignorant of it, aka horror, and they were kind of coming from it a totally different angle. So he said kind of having this horror guidance and coming at it from a character study film, that they found this really nice mix. And that was one of the reasons Bryson Duplass said it was fun for them to partner with Blum and see what they could do with it, because them kind of entering in with this depth character piece, just made a great pair. And so I have a quote from Duplass again, like saying that they basically credit Blum with giving this movie focus, and they said, quote, "He really helped us shape the thing more clearly into something we could call a horror movie." And they kind of credit the entire film. They'd say like Jason Blum, like, it's the reason this film is so good, which I think is giving too much credit to him. Production. I have a little picture of a camera here for you.
Hey!
So
What
production,
did they shoot on?
yeah, I have it for you.
Yes.
I made sure to find out. Trav was actually really interested, so I put that bit in for the two of you.
Thank you.
So they filmed in Crestline, California, which is near Lake Arrowhead, if you're familiar. And they actually shot in Mark Duplass's 3-bedroom house and surrounding areas. Because I was like, what house is this? Because $500 alone at the time.
It's not going to get you.
Yeah, I was like, you're not going to get an Airbnb.
Yeah. And it looks like an Airbnb.
Yeah. So it was his home that they shot in. Also, Crestline is a place that I really wanted to live. Before I moved here, I was really fighting to move there because it's just out of LA and it's a tiny, tiny little mountain town. And it's like, you get snowed in. There's like cute little parades. It just feels very like community. Yeah. So it's a kind of inherently this little pocket town that I think, even though you don't see much of it, you can kind of get that when they're out in the woods and stuff. You kind of get the vibe of the town, and I don't know.
It feels appropriately isolated.
Yeah. So once again, there's a debate on how long they shot this. I think they shot the initial, is what I'm thinking as I read more stuff. I think they shot the initial film for a week. But then it sounds like they did all those extra shots over the course of a year. So I think they got the bulk and then would kind of do those mini reshoots.
That makes sense.
Again, I couldn't really find a clear answer on stuff. So if somebody knows. Yep. They shot guerrilla style and only had a 3-person crew. That's what it was. So 3-person crew, Duplass, Patrick, and then I forget the other person's name. And they
probably their cam op or whoever.
They did not have a cam op. Yeah, you're wrong.
So what is that other sound? Maybe like I'm just trying to think. What
they didn't even have like sound though. I don't know. Producer, crafty. They had to eat.
Tubby time specialist.
Yeah. The invisible child. Peachfuzz. So they showed up on set with only a 5-page outline for the entire film, and their goal was really to make this small arts and crafty handmade film, which I think they perfectly accomplished. They shot it all on a Panasonic HVX camera, which is a mid-2000s camera that they chose because it was really easy to operate and they could operate it. So that was the camera.
So early digital, or
I believe that's digital, right?
Yeah. Okay.
I was like, it doesn't look that big. I feel like so many people had that at the time. So Patrick Bryce said his style of shooting that you see a lot of found footage movies where this is my point of, they thought it was pretty clear that you can tell that they're not operating it. So with Creep, they wanted to make sure that was not the case. So that's why they got this easy to shoot with stuff, unlike yours.
Right.
Did not get, I mean, Mark probably knew how to do it. But it's something where they didn't have to think about it, I think, too. So
Which is why you're like, they did not have a camera.
Yeah, they did not have. There was not anyone operating that camera other than them. An interviewer asked Bryce how he was operating the camera as an extension of his performance, and he replied with, "We were both wearing a lot of hats. You have to rely completely on your intuition, and I was very aware that the genre and the fact that there has to be a justification for the camera being on at every moment." So that's why I think this film works and like makes you feel uneasy, is because the scenes that they they kind of gave intent for why the camera's there. Also is he's trying to capture this man's quote dying wishes for his kids. So
I think it's also, this is one of the things that I was thinking about looking at the jump between my film and yours, because mine is all tape and film and yours is all digital, is how much more the characters in yours are keeping the camera on the whole time. Like one of, I think, the really big differences, as I hit the microphone again, one of the big differences that I think is so fascinating seeing the trajectory of found footage is that when Blair Witch comes out, it makes sense that the characters themselves would only have the camera on for like a half an hour, an hour a day. Yeah. And so part of what it feels like the characters' commentary is when they choose to turn the camera on to record something. Whereas here, it's much more like, I'm trying to record as much as I possibly can.
And capture it all.
Right. And so I think part of what horror directors take advantage of in that situation is like, when do characters have a camera turned on something that they don't know is creepy or they don't know will be important? Whereas in earlier found footage, it's all the characters choosing to film something because they're seeing something. Or because they think they might be about to see something. And it's a very different feeling.
For sure. It's such like a wild, the time difference isn't that huge between these two, but like their world's different of how we used to capture
the technology
stuff.
it makes such a huge difference.
Yeah. That's so interesting to think about is you could just keep it rolling and then edit it later.
Yeah. You can get hundreds of hours of footage instead of like 20.
For sure. And I think that's the style of like how they shot this film.
I'm sure.
In general. They talked about how, like I said, they came in with a 5-page outline, but they also said that they kind of had a very little end game in mind with this. So they had like the core interactions between the two characters, and that was kind of guiding the rest of it. So kind of in the same, I think, of Blair Witch, they kind of were just going to see like improv what happened, which I have a section on improv, which we'll get to shortly. Mark said, quote, so they put together this outline, shot for about a week. We came home, put some stuff together and looked at what we had. Then we went through this process of shooting a bit more, editing a bit more, showing it again. And at some point they kind of noticed where people were really getting scared in these moments and then kind of tailored it to that way. He goes on to say, it's this thing that's similar to Misery, where you're watching this nice, lovely person, but something's off. So at the point we thought it was time to go into the madness, and that's when the movie kind of started to take shape. So they kind of just, I don't know, if you're just kind of doing something with the two of you and like seeing where it lands, there's the freedom a little bit more with that. Dubois said that they also both like loved the idea of putting just two people in a room and seeing how they interact, which is what I said I love, so that they can kind of have this character that was trying to do whatever he could to get this love and attention, which is Joseph's character, and the other who just needs to have someone like need his love too, and like how they would kind of, because like we said, like I would fucking leave at one point, but like what is this other person?
What's keeping him there? Yeah. And it really does feel like he needs to be needed. Yeah.
Or just like needs to prove himself because he's taking this gig. And I think at one point Joseph asked him too, like, why did you even take this? Like, do you need money?
Yeah.
I'll give you money. And he's like, no, but it's just like, he must have something to prove or wants to change like its life in some way. So they really do like need each other in this really fucked up way, which is why he doesn't leave.
It's like mutually parasitic.
Yeah. So that's why I love too that they changed the title to be Creep.
It's a good point.
It's like Aaron's not a good
guy either. Over.
You know what I mean?
I'm coming to like the title more.
So again, like speaking to like who's the creep here, Dubois said, I feel like if I have anything to offer to the horror genre, I've built my whole career on trying to get performances that feel somewhat naturalistic and more real than your average film. And boy, does he fucking do it. And so moving on to kind of the improv of it all. So 5-page outline. They had no dialogue written. They just had like beats. They said they only had a Bible bare bones. So they would have notes like driving a car while videotaping dialogue, and that would be it. Yeah. And they would just sit there with each other. The found footage format lended to their ability to kind of do this too, because they could just do take after take if they needed to. I think they could change the topic of what they were talking about.
That's also super interesting, because part of what was distinct about Blair Witch was that they reshot almost nothing. It was basically just continually moving forward in the narrative.
Oh my God, yeah. And I think I would love to see the outtakes of some of this shit too, because like I said, they also have alternate endings. But yeah, I'm curious, like, how many times they did the car driving scene, or how many times they did
how many different versions they got of things.
How many Peachfuzz dances did we get? You know what I mean?
Oh my God, I need a compilation cut of Peachfuzz dances.
Just once. Cut print. So they relied heavily on the feedback. And because of this, they said they kind of shaped this, what they called like a psychological black comedy, more into the psychological horror film, with the advice of their friends with it. And Bryce said, quote, "I didn't know what was going to happen with Duplass or what was going to be happening with me. We were just trying to keep it fresh in the moment."
Love it.
And Duplass says while they were filming and improvising, he said half of what they got was really interesting and half of what they got was absolute fucking shit.
Honestly, all things considered, not a bad ratio.
Yeah. I love that he's like honest. He was like, it just like sucked. They were trying to zero in on like the crazy energy of Joseph and like what it did to Aaron. And in many ways, they discovered the film through making it. And they just, really wanted to focus on this profile piece. And diving more into like the character development and what they had in mind too. We obviously have the first half of this film is solely on Joseph, and we barely get to see Aaron at all. Yeah. And so they said the role of Joseph is kind of this hybrid between Duplass's like world and relationship of movies, and Jason Blum's world of the horror movie. And if you think of a movie like Misery and what Kathy Bates did there's something fascinating about that character. She's sweet, there's love there, but there's a dark side. So as for the mask of Peachfuzz, I did find out where they got it from.
I was so curious, because like that's not a dollar store
and
mask.
I think they did a lot of research trying to find something that was like unique enough.
And they did a good job. It's a good mask.
I want to say, do they have it in Spirit Halloween now? I feel like they make it now, or like maybe this company still makes it. But they kind of eventually stumbled upon this really obscure website for the mask, and then when they called the guy up to like get it ordered, they were just like, yep, this is it. It's from Forum Novelties, and I don't know if it's still in production at this place, but it's the 59449 Night Wolf mask. But I think they just probably sat on the 8th page of
just
Google
scrolled,
and finally got someplace. So if you want it, it might still exist there. The alternative endings I was talking about,
Sorry, go ahead. Because I'll be honest, the ending was the part that I liked the least.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know why. It didn't quite... Oh, so tell me what the alternates were.
Let's see if you like the alternates better. So the ones I could find, I think they did at least 3. So I only have 3. I think there might have been more. So they have the unveiling of the mask. So one ending, you could see Joseph fully removing his mask, revealing his true face, potentially causing more unsettling reaction from Aaron. We then got a sudden attack ending, which involved a more abrupt and violent attack from Joseph with little to no warning. That left the scene more shocking, so we didn't get that slow walk up behind and that like sitting there with like what is he gonna do?
That part works for me. It's I think, to be honest, I think it's maybe the shot of the tapes at the end that just feels like it's the button on it that's not satisfying to me. Like if it had just ended,
a bunch?
Yeah, if it had just ended with something that maybe more hinted that he'd done this before but didn't explicitly state it, that would have been creepier to me. Yeah.
Got it.
It felt a little too on the nose.
Got it. Yeah, there could have been like some hint
exactly
earlier on that he like maybe had someone
like even
film something else for some other reason or something.
Yeah, like even if we just saw that he has like a cabinet full of cameras or something like that, but we don't see what he's using them for, that would creep me out more. Like he's kept a trophy from every camera person who's kept up here.
I was gonna say, maybe if we had like a nod to like him keeping something, okay,
that would have worked a little better.
I feel that,
me. But I recognize that's pretty nitpicky. But
they shot multiple endings, so
true.
The last one was a psychological manipulation ending.
Ooh.
They kind of focused more on Joseph's psychological manipulation of Aaron with subtle threats and disturbing behavior before the final confrontation, which we get a little bit of that when it kind of switches more on Aaron at the end there, but I think they were going to lean a little bit more into that.
Interesting. I could see that being really interesting. I'd be curious to see what that alternate looked like.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm okay with the ending, I think.
I think the execution of the attack is quite good.
Yeah.
That part works
so just like
well for me.
It's also so jarring because we're so close on everyone and everything, and then all of a sudden you're just like way the
wide,
fuck far back. Yeah.
Which is a nice use of that contrast.
It's a little jarring in that way. So releasing kind of critics' response of this, it has a 6.3 out of 10 on IMDb, and just like yours, it has a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics and a 61%
Look at
from
that.
Audience.
That's so interesting.
Which I think this might be my first that's like super switched like
that.
Or at least
usually
by
it's
that
the
degree.
other way around.
30%?
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, your film is rated, I think, higher than mine. I think I said mine is like 86 or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean,
fascinating.
I
mean, we agree, but
so Creep premiered on the festival circuit in March of 2014, and then surprisingly for me became a really big hit with the critics.
Interesting.
They generally praised it for its unique and unsettling take on the found footage horror genre, highlighting its clever writing, the strong performances of the two of them, and the ability to create a deeply disturbing atmosphere despite minimal gore that we see in this.
Very much.
Same in yours. We don't see any gore. Oh well, we see
just
the
the
scalp.
tooth
And the skull, his little like fleshy scalp.
Oh yeah,
we see his like his hair.
Yeah,
kind of gross.
Yeah,
is it? I couldn't figure out what it was. That's what I assumed it was.
I think that's what it is. Yeah. There's like a little bloody goop.
Yeah,
pile. Yeah. The production designer actually said that he tried to get the fake blood to the consistency of creamy peanut butter, which I thought was kind of fun.
Lauren played a sound.
Oh no! I feel like we've got to leave that in.
Yeah. We're leaving that in.
Yeah.
Ooh, Lauren's not paying attention.
We're boring Warren.
Warren's like, you guys hated on Blair Witch, and I can't stand for this.
Yeah.
He's editing it out. I don't know where to go from here.
God damn it.
Shame. In a bloody, disgusting article in 2024, they kind of reflected on like the 10-year anniversary of Creep. And the article reads, psychological thrillers about manipulation maniacs aren't anything new, but we really hadn't seen anything like this found footage before Creep, with the movie exploring the grounded frights than your usual supernatural threats like ghosts and witches. Sorry, Blair Witch. In fact, most of the original film's tension comes from the concentrated peer pressure rather than genuine scares, both with Bryce and Duplass crafting believable characters that are just a few awkward interactions away from being too strange.
It's so true.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like this is one of those films that I'm genuinely surprised that critics really liked.
Yeah.
It obviously went on to it has a franchise. There's Creep 2. There's the Creep tapes now that came out. This also has some awards that I wanted to note. South by Southwest nominated. It was nominated for the Audience Award in 2014.
Cool.
Chicago International Film Festival nominated it for Audience Choice Award as well. Fangoria Chainsaw Awards gave Best Actor in 2016. And
to
I wanted
Duplass or to
I believe Duplass. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't write who. Sorry, IMDb has it.
Do your own research.
I want to end on another quote from Duplass saying, he says, quote, "I don't need to measure my dick against big theatrical releases anymore. I'm in a place in my career where I'm just like, this is a really great and appropriate way for this movie to go out."
Just need some tubby time.
Yeah, some tubby time. But yeah, I love this film. It was hard to find stuff on it. Some of the sources I listed, like, you can just read the blurbs of stuff, but I feel like it was just like a lot of, which, to be fair, I feel like I cover too, a lot of repetitive statements made. Fair. I tried so hard to sift through. I thought there was going to be, because I did like a quick little search before we decided on these films, and I saw there was like, a making of on YouTube. It wasn't what I thought it was.
No.
So I kind of like dug myself a little hole there.
Well, and I feel like with something like this, you would expect found footage to have more behind the scenes, because you expect them to just be running all the time. But when you don't have
them just shooting,
because it is actually just them,
shot. Like, they're both filmmakers, they're both actors. I feel like they
we're
knew,
not
like,
going to keep the camera on when we don't need it.
I think they knew when to turn it off. So like in that sense too, I think even though they shot it in a week, but then went on to do reshoots and retakes or whatever. I think they
were shooting for the film. They weren't shooting for the BTS.
Yeah. So
interesting.
That's creep.
I feel like we should we should give it a little time, but we should do another found footage pairing, because there's so many.
I want to do VHS films so bad.
And I know you want to do rec too.
I do.
Yeah, I haven't seen either. So
yeah, we'll have to sift through, because we could do any VHS. We could do like the original rec or whatever. But
and rec is the one that's from Spain, right?
Yeah, but there's also a US like shot for shot. So I would almost say watch both.
Watch both. That makes sense.
So you could come in with that. But yeah, rec's fucking great. So
love.
Yeah. But instead of speaking about those films, we can tee off what we're doing next time.
Yeah, we've got a weird pairing planned for next time.
Yeah, we actually had can I give the story of like
yes, give the story.
Lead
us in. Yeah.
Well, we were trying to figure out, you had like some films in mind, as you often do.
Because we have this one that's coming out at the beginning of February, and then we have the one that's the closest to Valentine's. And so I was like, I want to do something that's like not our Valentine's proper episode, but like leading into that season. So
we were looking at something. I remember like seeing like a suggestion on IMDb, and I clicked on it and I sent it to you, and I was like, Siena, this is so you coded. It like reminded me of like a Dario Argento film. So I was like, it has Sam Neill in it. And so I was like, have you seen this before? And Siena's like, of fucking course I
was
have.
like, Al, I've been begging you to watch this for a year.
So we're finally doing it because I thought it looked fucking great. So you're doing...
I'm doing Possession. It's very hard to find. We're gonna see where we can find it.
Yeah, we're gonna have to look up.
But it's one that I originally saw at the Jean Cocteau before I started working at the Jean Cocteau. So yeah, and I kind of pitched it to Al because I didn't want to spoil what Possession's about, because it's a wild movie. It looks amazing. And it does a really good job. The trailer for Possession does a really good job of not revealing what Possession's about.
Sick.
Which is a very easy thing to do, because it's a film that's about a lot of things. It's but I described it to Al as an early good for her horror.
Yeah.
And so
we kind of I don't know if I would like call this movie good for her, but it's all we could think of at the time that we're like, yeah. And we've talked about doing it before.
To be fair, I was looking on Letterboxd for like movies that people who like Possession like, and this kept coming up as a recommendation. So some of y'all agree with us that these films have something in common.
Yeah. We try. So I'm going to be doing Silent Hill.
Yeah, it's a weird pairing.
We haven't.
I've never seen it.
Once again, we have not seen the other person's film.
Yeah, so we're going to see how this
wildly
feels.
Different. I feel like in tone, how they're shot, like
what they're about, everything. But it also just feels right somehow. There's something about it. There's my gut instinct is telling me that it's going to be a good match,
I think
even though I have no idea.
Me too.
Why.
So buckle up. Other than that, like we said, American Psycho's playing at the Jean Cocteau Cinema.
Cute little Valentine's date.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like what else is going on, but I feel like that's it. Please, if you guys like have the time and like doing it, please leave a review.
Love those.
Yeah, it's nice to see support there.
Yeah, especially because as we don't know what's going to happen with TikTok, and TikTok is where we interact with a lot of you.
Yeah,
so like
this comes out I mean, in lieu of if you're moving over, we're looking at other places to be, but we're on Instagram. We post like the same type of content. So if you're looking for a place, we're also on YouTube. We'll let you know if we're gonna get a blue sky. I'm on Redbook right now, which is a Chinese app that's like TikTok.
Hilarious.
They're being very nice to us for invading their space right now. So we'll let you know, but Instagram's a great place to find us. Our link tree has everything. And I think that's
it.
Thank you, Warren.
Yeah, thanks, Warren.
I want to throw a slight. Warren probably cut it out of this episode.
You guys probably don't know,
he played something on his phone.
Yeah, Warren was watching another video during our recording.
You can't cut this out now.
We got you.
Thanks, Travis Fowler, for camera things and thumbs up in time. Thanks for waving. Theo Schaefer for the music as always. Thanks to you, Siena. I don't know why I did that.
I love when you do that. It's very rare, but it always makes me feel so good.
Thanks for hanging in there with me.
Thank you, Al, and thanks to the camera for recording it all. Yeah.
Until then. Thanks for listening to Splice Splatter.
The film podcast presented by the Cocteau Cinema in Cinemain, Mexico, where classic horror.
Until
next time, we'll be right back.